It's been one heck of a season here with the complimentary plays in the NFL, as the freebies on the video report way back since September are 40, 21, and 4. And I'm going to break down and give you my free selection on the late game between the Patriots and Steelers. Plus, as I've done in each round of the postseason so far, I'm going to give you a historical perspective of how the conference championship games have broken down from an ATS point of view, going way back to the AFL-NFL merger back in 1970, and that's coming up in just a moment. Now, yesterday with the free picks, I had 2 out of 3. Cashed in with Marshall coming off 2 straight losses, hammering Western Kentucky, as I thought they would. Also scoring with Notre Dame easily over Syracuse. I told you the Orangemen are lousy on the road, FYI now, 0-6 on the road. Road games and neutral court games this season with 6 straight road losses against the spread. Lost a game between Creighton and Marquette as the Golden Eagles handed Creighton its second loss of the season. Certainly Creighton losing its starting point guard, and that Xavier win on Monday has certainly affected the Blue Jays' fates and fortunes. But still, hey, 2 out of 3 of the complimentary college basketball plays, 5 out of 6 dating back to Wednesday. I can live with that, and so can you. But listen, before I get to the football, I just want to point out something that is so important. From a handicapper's perspective, obviously, this is something that I do and I take into account every single day. From a gambler's perspective, though, I think a lot of people miss the boat. And I'm talking about strategy when it comes to betting games. Listen, there are rules that can be applied to so many different situations and scenarios in every single sport on any given day. Case in point, yesterday's video report, I told you how I broke one of my own cardinal rules by putting good money on a bad team, and that being New Orleans, and watching my money fly out the window when the Pelicans got smoked by a lousy New Jersey Nets team that had lost, or Brooklyn Nets team. Hell, they should send them back to New Jersey. After they had lost 28 out of 32 games, 15 straight on the road, and they score 7,000 points at New Orleans and win going away on Friday night and cost me money. Okay? But listen, one of the most important things that I think that you have to always consider in college basketball is the anticipation of line moves. Now, when I handicapped the Saturday card, the one game that was just screaming, bet me, bet me, bet me for everything it's worth, was the Florida State-Louisville game. Because when I saw that line, Florida State -3, immediately I thought that is just too cheap of a price. I know why it was too cheap of a price, because in Florida State's last game, a couple of nights earlier, Wednesday night in fact, a game that I gave you as a complimentary play, and I was worried because I didn't want to put money on the Florida State Seminoles that night because I thought they were a little bit too heavy of a favorite against Notre Dame, and they failed to cover the spread. Well, I thought there was a little too much compensation going on with the line and the way it was shaped for the game against Louisville. And another factor I thought that affected that line was the fact that Louisville had beaten Duke and hammered Clemson in its previous 2 games at home. And consequently, Florida State was only deemed to be 3 points better than Louisville. But as a guy who studies all this games, the way I looked at it was Louisville beat a Duke team that didn't have Emil Jefferson, its best post player, in the lineup. That's why Louisville was able to escape with the win against the Dukies last weekend. And Clemson entered that game at the Yum Center on Thursday night with 4 straight losses. So seeing Clemson get blown out by 30 points was no big surprise. So I thought Louisville was being overvalued by the odds makers, and subsequently that line was set too low. The anticipation part comes into this. I figured that line was going to go up. So I immediately put that price or that play out there. And sometimes if you're a customer of mine, you'll see what I'll do. Instead of putting the play and the analysis out at once, I'll just throw the play out there. And I encourage all the handicappers to do that when they anticipate a possible line move. Put the play out and come back with the analysis. Now, some guys just put the play out and come out with the analysis later, and they just don't care. I'm just not one of those guys. I anticipated that game going up. So yesterday at 9:40 Eastern time, I put out Florida State, and the line at that time was -3. I came back and put my analysis in 1 hour later, about 55 minutes later, actually, at 10:35 Eastern time. And at that time, I noted that Florida State had now moved to -4, but I still loved the Seminoles. What happened? This is a 2 o'clock Eastern time tip-off in Tallahassee. Well, by 11:45 Eastern time, we're talking 2 hours and 5 minutes after I first released that play, that game went up to 5. And what happened? Florida State wins that game 83-78. Now listen, I've always told you, 99.9% of the time, you bet the favorites early and the underdogs late. I don't care what sport you're talking about. And yesterday, I won money. I think 95% of you, probably 99% of you out there that are my customers, you probably won money as well, which is why I released the play early, which is why I updated the play early, because when I'm telling you that line has moved, guys, that's as good as me calling you and hitting you over the head with a shovel and telling you, get your bet in. Unfortunately, I think a lot of gamblers and even a lot of handicappers in this business, they don't anticipate line moves. You have to do that, especially when you have public teams, when you have marquee teams where you have to anticipate the line move. Is the public going to come in here? We're not just talking the sharps. We're not talking the wise guys. We're not talking the big money mover guys. I'm just talking about the general public. Are they going to come in here and bet one side or the other and either suppress or inflate a line? You have to anticipate that. It's not going to happen when Wisconsin Green Bay is hosting Wright State in a Horizon League game on a Tuesday night, okay? That ain't happening that often. But when you have the marquee games, you can anticipate those type of line moves. And as a gambler, as a handicapper, you have to anticipate it as well. And subsequently, you've got to get in and make sure that you time the play. And of course, that leads to another whole story. That means also that's a situation where you naturally have to have two sources. Because I can tell you for a fact, yesterday at a couple of those big named offshore sports books, well, that line was already a half point heavier for Florida State early in the morning to begin with. So you were screwed even earlier in the morning playing at those books, which is, again, a great place to play at those big name offshore sports books if you're betting the underdog. But if you're betting the favorites, you always want to have another alternative. But that's another story for another day. Okay, let's talk a little football here. Listen, I can tell you there's a pattern that has developed in talking about the first couple of rounds of the playoffs that is going to continue today. Generally, conference championship games have a tendency to be blowouts. So what do we know so far? Through the first two rounds of the playoffs, the favorites are 6-2. And they were 6-0 until both underdogs covered last Sunday. And all the underdog players came out of the woodworks telling you last weekend, oh, you got to play the dogs. Yeah, right. After the favorites covered the first 6 games. Now, bottom line is home teams are 6-0 straight up and 5-1 against the spread in conference championship action over the past 3 years. The lone exception being the Packers cover at Seattle 2 years ago. Now, if you happen to be dreaming of a Packers-Steelers Super Bowl showdown, get over it, because it probably is not going to be happening, because both the road teams have advanced to the Super Bowl only 3 times since the AFL-NFL merger back in 1970. Quick, come on, if you happen to be on Jeopardy, name me the last time we had both road teams emerge. Cue up the music. I'll tell you, we got to improve the budget around here because the sound guys never have the music queued up when I want it. Okay, we'll skip the Jeopardy music. The answer is, ladies and gentlemen, come on. Have you figured it out? Seriously, come on. Okay, 2012, when the Ravens won in, ding, 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 New England, and the 49ers won in Atlanta. And before that, just so I want to make sure that you can sleep tonight, because you won't be sitting there going, damn it, that DeMarco guy didn't tell me the other 2 times. I'm not going to be able to sleep. Where do I get this crap from, huh? 1997, the Broncos won in Pittsburgh and the Packers won in San Francisco. And back in 1992, the Bills won in Miami and Dallas won in San Francisco. So that's it. 3 times since 1970, both of the road teams won, which tells you both road teams ain't winning today, odds are, right? Now, in the AFC Championship game, the favorites have actually done extremely well. They've covered 10 out of 14 games. Does that mean the Patriots are going to be the play? Well, we'll talk about the game here in a moment. Let's break down the numbers a little further. So again, going back to the merger back in 1970, the favorites are 50 wins, 39 losses, and 2 pushes against the spread. There was 1 pick'em game. Home teams are 51, 39, and 2 against the spread in that stretch. Home favorites are 12 games over 500 in that stretch. But here's the more important numbers. You've had 82 games total 82. 64 of those games, guys, that's 78%, have been decided by at least a touchdown or more. You got two favorites today. What are they laying? 5.5 to 6 points, right? Again, 78% of them have been decided by at least 7 points. 41 of those 82 games, quick, do the math. Yes, that's 50%, have been decided by at least 2 touchdowns. Again, terribly one-sided games, but doesn't that make sense since you have the number 1 seeds holding court at home at this stage of the playoffs? Number 1 seeds that generally have enjoyed the benefit of having a bye week, right? And the teams that they are facing have generally either come from a wild card round or had to fight their way in on the road to get to this stage. A harder road, a harder path to this game. So it's no big surprise in my book that the home favorites and the home teams have done so well. Now, in terms of the over-under, the over is 8-2-1 in the last 11 NFC Championship games. And what do we have today? A record-setting total in the Atlanta Green Bay? Yes, the highest postseason total ever. The under, however, is 7-3 in the last 10 games played, AFC, NFC Championship games combined over the past 5 years. So I think the Atlanta Green Bay game is the best bet on the board today. So let's talk about New England Pittsburgh. And I got to tell you guys, one of the reasons that I'm giving this play away for free is, again, I grew up a Steelers fan. I like the Steelers still, but I have a hard time betting against Tom Brady, okay? Now, let's talk about the regular season meeting. It means absolutely nothing in most aspects because Ben Roethlisberger didn't play. Landry Jones was starting. Can't really, judge much about that game. However, LeGarrette Blount had 127 yards rushing in that first game in Pittsburgh. Now, he had a bad game against the Texans last week. He was bothered by some type of virus, flu, whatever. Only 8 carries for 31 yards. Dion Lewis, a guy who I told you in last week's video report, who I thought was going to be one of the keys, who missed the first half of the season, most of the 3/4 of the first half of the season, really made the difference in the last 4 games. Last week's game against the Texans, final 3 games of the regular season, Dion Lewis, 59 carries, 236 yards, of course, had 3 touchdowns last week. Tom Brady has gone 15-3 straight up at home in the playoffs. Yes, the Steelers carry a 9-game winning streak into this game, but as I pointed out last week, who did the Steelers really beat during those 9 games? They won at Cleveland, they won at Indianapolis. Okay, they beat the Giants at home. I'll give you that. They won at Buffalo. They won at Cincinnati. They beat the Baltimore Ravens at home. Okay. Tough game, though. They beat the Browns at home. They beat the Dolphins in the playoffs at home. And they struggled to beat Kansas City on the road. First meeting, Tom Brady. It was still against Pittsburgh's number 1 defense, right? 222 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, Brady did not have a good game last week against Houston. And, to me, what happened to the Patriots last week is akin to what happens to teams in the college bowl postseason. You have a finely tuned machine and you give them 4 weeks off and suddenly they come out and they play like crap. And that to me is what happened with the Patriots, a team that had been humming along offensively. You give them that bye week and they just sputtered offensively against the Texans last week. I mean, Brady 18 for 38, 287 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I just don't think the week off helps, certainly. Now, Brady had only thrown 2 interceptions in the entire stretch since he came back from missing the first 4 games of the season. So, bottom line is this. He is 9-2 lifetime against the Steelers with 26 touchdown passes and 3 interceptions, and that's regular season and postseason combined. The other thing that always bothers me about the Steelers is something I pointed out last week about Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger at Heinz Field is not the Ben Roethlisberger you get on the road, and this is a long-term trend. This year at home, he completed 70.8% of his passes, 20 touchdown passes, 5 interceptions, a quarterback rating of 116.7%. But on the road this year, and this is regular season action, his percentage completion ratio was 59.4%. Only 9 touchdowns versus 8 interceptions, and his QBR rating, 78.4. This is a long-term trend. Last year, 39 touchdowns at home, 11 interceptions the previous 2 years combined. 39 touchdowns at home versus 11 interceptions, but on the road the previous 2 years, 14 TD passes, 14 interceptions. And what happened last week at Kansas City? If you look at the numbers, on the surface, they were okay for Roethlisberger, 20 for 31, 224 yards, but again, 0 touchdown passes, 1 interceptions, 4 trips into the red zone, 0 touchdowns produced. It was a battle of field goals in that one. Yet, Ben is 14-6 in the playoffs, including 6-2 on the road. Le'Veon Bell, something we can take out from that first game against New England. Only 81 yards rushing in the first meeting. Now, we know he's averaged 146.5 yards in the last 8 games he's played. We know that he's had monster games of 167 and 170 yards, respectively, against Miami and Kansas City in the first 2 playoff games. But keep in mind, Miami's run defense was ranked 30th in the league this regular season. Kansas City's was ranked number 26th in the league. New England, number 3 in the league run defense, giving up 88.6 yards a game, 3.9 yards a carry. No running back has gained 100 yards against them this season. David Johnson of Arizona had the best game. He gained 89. LaShawn McCoy, 1 game against him, 70. Jay Ajayi of Miami, 59-14. Lamar Miller last week, 74. Steelers, 31 sacks during their 9-game winning streak. Well, Houston got 2 sacks of Brady last week, but the offensive line has been excellent for Brady this entire season. Bottom line is, I look at this number. Could this be a field goal game? Yes, it could. But I just have this feeling that Brady and the Patriots are going to be coming out here and be so much more cohesive offensively. That Blount is going to be so much more of an impact player here and fueling the ground game. And again, I think Roethlisberger's track record on the road the past 3 years cannot be overlooked. Something else to consider. The flu ran rampant through the Steelers this week. Now, everybody's, listed as being available. Everybody's going to play. But you got to wonder if that's going to have any, no pun intended, ill effects here for Pittsburgh as well. I just think that I'd much rather go ahead and be in the position of laying the points with New England. Again, very difficult game for me. I like the Patriots, love the Steelers. I like both quarterbacks. That's why I'm not betting it. That's why I'm going to have my money on the early game, which I really like. And I'm going to be a fan, like the rest of you probably, watching the late one. But I do like New England here. And again, I think because the Patriots have the run defense, they have the home field advantage. They're coming off a disjointed effort last week. And, oh, by the way, Mike Tomlin's post-game speech last week, it certainly didn't help. I'm sure Bill Belichick will remind this team a few times. But the one thing Tomlin said, other than, the few derogatory remarks that he made, the one thing that was accurate, hey, the Patriots did have a major advantage. They have an extra really day and a half to prepare for this game because the Steelers played the late Sunday night game and they played on the road. And let's not discount that extra preparation time here, especially since Pittsburgh played the week before when the Patriots had the bye. And the Patriots also get the extra day and a half prep time. And that counts so much when we're talking at this late stage of the season. So again, I like New England, and that's going to be your free play. I wish you well, guys. I hope you make some money today. And either way, I will hopefully be back here on Monday when we do this one more time. Good luck, everybody.